Hey guys, it's Andrew Davidson, and welcome back to another As Per My Ability video. Welcome back to a special edition of As Per My Ability. If you like what we do here on the channel, if you like our content, if you like our videos, if you like board games in general, do us a favor, do all the fun YouTube stuff, comment, like, subscribe. Make sure you hit the little bell so you get notifications when we post videos. We put out a video every Tuesday, so you won't want to miss that, so make sure you hit the bell. Like I said, today's video is a special Zoom call interview video. I decided to reach out to Nato, who is somewhat in charge of Legendary Tactics. So Nato,
one of there's three of us, but yeah,
right, yeah, and you know,
something like a democracy.
We'll get into all of that stuff, but that's who's joining me today for just an interview. We're going to sit down and have a little chit chat, mostly about Legendary Tactics and their brand and things like that. But I'd like to start off with kind of an anecdote, I guess. Legendary Tactics came on my radar probably about 4 months ago when I was maybe less, I don't know, a little while back, when I was looking for content on the board game 1960, The Making of the President. And I wasn't looking for just necessarily how to play videos, because we were talking kind of off camera, so to speak, about Rodney Smith, and he's got a really good, watch it played, how to play 1960. But I was just looking for like strategies and some of the nuances like of the game. For those of you that don't know 1960, it's a very, very long, in-depth two-player, I guess you would call it an area control game. And Legendary Tactics was one of the channels that came across that had a lot of content about the strategies and the cards and things like that. So I just found myself, as most of us do, sitting in our beds, in our boxers, whatever, just going through the scroll of like video after video and just kind of watching video after video. So I believe, Nato, we talked a little bit on Twitter. We were messaging on Twitter a little bit previously. And then I just asked Nato to basically this is actually really impromptu. We're recording this on a Saturday night. So that just goes to show how pathetic our own lives are. It's a Saturday evening. And so we're sitting here. So again, thanks for joining me for this episode. Welcome. So the first thing I want to talk about is Legendary Tactics. So basically, just how did it get started? Who's involved? What is it about? Just kind of give me your origin story.
Yeah, well, basically, Legendary Tactics started out as a COVID project. So I'd like to say I'm in charge of Legendary Tactics, but I'm not. No, it's just me and two friends. One Flash, whom I've known him since kindergarten, and Cax is a friend from high school. So we've all known each other. I don't even know what the combined year, at least 20 plus 25 years we've known each other and been friends. So for we were in the habit of connecting online, to play games, sometimes video games, sometimes board games online, that kind of thing. And it was actually Flash that suggested that we start a YouTube channel back when the lockdown started in March of 2020. And he kind of dragged myself and Cax along for the ride. Because we started out, actually, if you're familiar with League of Legends, there's a new, I don't know, what's a side game or something that they came out with called Teamfight Tactics. And so we started the channel originally as a channel covering Teamfight Tactics. And that's where we got Legendary Tactics from. It was a combination League of Legends, Teamfight Tactics, so we just combined them. And but my enthusiasm for Teamfight Tactics is limited at best, and so but I had the idea, and I don't even remember why or when, but it was actually Labyrinth, the War on Terror game by GMT, came out with a early access version of their digital port. And I thought, well, hey, you know what? I'm going to put up a a playthrough of this, and just talked. I'd seen other channels do it, and so I thought, well, I'll just try this, and it ended up getting us way more views than anything we'd done for Teamfight Tactics, because the video game space is so competitive. To make a splash, you have to be one of the top people in the world, really, to get any sort of viewership. But we noticed that, hey, we picked up some viewers here. We started doing other games. Initially, it was just me, and then eventually, the results began to speak for themselves, and the other two decided to, switch away from just that sole focus of Teamfight Tactics into something more broad. And so we've expanded. I mean, more or less, we're board games in general, but a lot of times we do focus on the digital implementations of games. So
yeah, I did really know that you started off in video games. I've only seen the board game content again
yes,
when I was
we've
watching your stuff.
sunsetted the old Teamfight Tactics content. One of the challenges we ran into is the meta changes. Like they have a certain mix of characters for 6 months or whatever, and then they just hit the reset button, and it's a whole new slew of characters, and they never bring them back. They never they never go back to season 1 or season 2. So it means that all your content essentially becomes dead in the water. And so that was another reason to move to board games, because a lot of board games live on for decades. Some of the content that we are doing about old Avalon Hill games,
Yep.
some of them have been around 60 years. And so
Wow.
So we just saw that there was a less competition in that space. We enjoy board games anyway, so it wasn't a big change for us. It just meant we played different stuff at night, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I do want to get into your content at some point, but at first you just mentioned 3 different people that are involved. So who does what there?
We all fill different roles, and I think that's what it was totally unplanned, in the sense that we didn't really know, like most YouTubers that start out fresh and have no idea what they're doing. We didn't either. Flash started out as our main editor, but it was obvious after a while that he wasn't going to be able to do that consistently, so I took on that role as well. But all of us write and record and play and everything. And really, it's the only thing is Cax hasn't really stepped into the editing part of things yet. But other than that, we all kind of do our own thing. I will say that Flash is our thumbnail guy. That's his. I've tried to do thumbnails, and I'm just not that skilled. He also has some software that works better for that, but his thumbnails are just head and shoulders above what anything Cax and I can come up with. So he's our thumbnail guy for sure. But so we kind of just share whatever we're good at.
He does the graphic design, is kind of what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's whatever you want to call it. He's probably watching this just being like, just get my title right.
Well, he's the designer behind the logo behind me here. So
yes, looks very sweet. So one thing I have to bring up, this is kind of meta, because we were talking about this again off camera, but you were saying how you guys don't really appear on camera. You don't appear in your videos.
This is, I think, this is my first appearance actually on camera.
So I was gonna make like a I think there's a Wizard of Oz reference in there. Like I get to see the wizard. So yes. why is that? Is there anything quirky, anything going on? Some people say they just don't have the lighting for it or whatever. Well,
it's partly, as they say, I've got a great face for radio, but it had some practical reasons behind that. Okay. I know Cax has appeared on camera a few times. He's done some unboxings and so forth with his kids, and he appears on camera that way. So there's nothing sacrilegious about it or anything. It was mainly, there was a couple things. Number one, we found it so much easier and faster to record footage digitally. So using things like Tabletop Simulator or the official digital ports made the production, it gave us a reasonably good production standard right out of the gate. So it was a lot easier to produce content that way. When you're filming in analog, and we have done some of that, it can be a real pain. You got to get the lighting right. The cat jumps up on the board, knocks the pieces over. Like it's it's a whole other world. And Flash does a lot more than I do. I don't really have the patience in the same way for that style. We're talking about doing a bit more of that, but it's at the moment we've been, for the most part, sticking to digital implementations of games. And also philosophically, we wanted the focus to be on the games and not on us. It wasn't so much, we don't necessarily want to turn into YouTube stars in the sense of, fame and fortune that way, but we wanted the focus to be on the games themselves. And, we figured that was one of the ways to do that. So
that's like very Daft Punk of you.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Or maybe
I should be wearing a mask of some
I think of like Slipknot. I don't know if you're a metalhead at all, but I think of like
I know Slipknot.
Yeah, we just want to be about the music and the art and whatever.
Yeah, well, there's something to that, I think, because there's it's there are creators that enjoy being on camera, and that's a an important part of it. And the one thing that I think it does hurt us a little bit, in the sense that I think that when there's a face to put to the voice and so forth, you can build that more of a human connection. Ours is a little bit like, our content is a little bit at arm's reach, and that may hurt us to some degree in terms of viewership and so forth, but it was something that we decided was important to us, and at the beginning, so that's what we've stuck with.
You mentioned that you started March of 2020. So is it correct? So you've been doing this for about 2 years?
Just about, well, this is what, January 8th. So it'll be, I think it was March 3rd or 4th, we uploaded our first video.
Okay.
And again, I think the first 2 or 3 weeks, I can't remember how many videos we put up. It was maybe 5 or 6, and they were all team fight tactics at the time.
Right.
I uploaded my Labyrinth video, I think, on, I don't know, March 21st. So I'm just off the top of my head. But that was really the first board game that we covered for a while. And I think we started transforming our content gradually over that April and May. And then our first kind of big break, if you will, was I did a how to play for the game Imperial Struggle. Mm-hmm. And that one was the first video we'd ever had that kind of blew up in any real way. I made sure that I got it out as quickly as I could. So it was one of the first videos that was covering how to play. And there's some games that, Rodney at Watch It Played they're not going to cover. So it was a bit of a niche that way. But that was kind of the first time where we saw a real jump in numbers. And we're like, oh, okay, maybe we got something here. So, and then by then we'd made the switch over complete.
So when you first got started, what were the biggest like struggles that you had that were technical and then maybe non-technical?
That's a good question. I think we got lucky in a sense, because there was a lot of stuff that we settled on very early that was, in the end, a good decision. Like, as an example, Flash made us upgrade our mics very early on, because he said, oh, I don't like the sound. I was recording my Sound 3 gaming headset, and he said, no, like, let's get a decent mic. And so there's a lot of stuff that we did early on, like making sure that we had, good quality sound relatively early on. We had, a style, use it like the font and everything. We picked that remained relatively consistent. But technically, I had to learn how to edit. I'd never really edited anything before, so that was a bit of a challenge. But I took to it pretty well. I've done music and edit, music recording in the past, so there was a lot of transferable skills that way. So I found that it was relatively easy to pick up, and of course you get better and better the more you do. So that was something that I worked on. But we another, as I said, a good decision that I referenced earlier was that we didn't start out with analog filming. We did more of a digital, digital approach to our productions. So it made it easier to move forward. Instead of getting bogged down in the technical details of lighting and trying to get your sound right and all that stuff, we didn't have to worry about that. And so I think that made a very, very big difference. And a technical challenge that we kind of avoided early on. Other than that, I mean, we kind of hit our stride. I feel that we hit our stride fairly early on. Of course, we've gotten better overall, but just with practice. But we when I go back and I watch some early videos, let's say from July of 2020 or something like that, I'm not embarrassed by them, which is which is a good thing. There's improvements, but they're not, I don't feel that they're unwatchable and terrible, to watch. They're reasonably good for that time, and we've moved on a fair bit since. But I hope that answers your question.
Okay, so through the powers of the internet, we're back. So we were just talking about, getting started with the brand on YouTube, some of the technical things, and you mentioned about not having to deal with lighting, but audio is obviously king. I work with the Level Up Board Game podcast, which is a podcast here in the States, that was the first thing that they talk about, is just like, like sound is really just king. Content's king, but sound is really king as well. So let's see, I kind of got thrown off my game, but no worries. Oh yes, your content. I want to get into your content, because your channel, especially now, because we've talked about kind of the origins of it, it's all so very specific and so esoteric. I mean, you have videos that go card by card, game by game, variant by variant, and not only that, but the games that you cover are all like GMT games, like you said before, Avalon Hill games, heavy like war games or conflict games, like a Twilight Struggle or something. How did that happen? Who does that? Whose idea was that? Is that just what you all like to play, and so that's what you all tried to do? Well, where did that come about?
Our content at this point anyway, where we sit right now, which is I think at around, I don't know, 7,300 subs, something like that. And we've got a really diverse audience, because we basically post content on whatever we like, and so we don't necessarily have much rhyme or reason to it. It is planned ahead somewhat, but in many cases we will try a game, like Flash tried Root and just loved it, so he did a bunch of strategy guides. I'm more the war gamer in the group. Cax is my willing opponent for a lot of these games, but I'm the person that has the history with Avalon Hill, and playing those games as I was growing up. And I'm big supporter of GMT. I own a lot of their games. So it's really not an organized thing in many ways. We really just go out and do whatever we feel like, and that's worked pretty well for us over the time. But I think it does also hold us back to some degree, because we're not a very focused channel in the sense of, there's some channels that just focus on Wingspan or on Settlers of Catan, and that's it, and that's all they do, and their audience knows that's the spot you go. And we're much more of a little more random in that sense, with the general. In general, we like to talk about digital ports of board games, but yeah, there's a lot of leeway there, and that's I think certainly for my sanity, and I think for the other guys as well. We like to have some creative freedom. This is for us more of a creative project overall. So I need to have variety. I couldn't do a channel purely on one game, for example, although it feels that way now that I've been doing a card by card for Twilight Struggle, and tomorrow
Yeah.
card 102 is going up, but I'm down to the last 8. So and that was just a project, an idea I had back in July of 2020, and it's taken me about a year and a half to work my way through those. So yeah, so it's I guess it would be, on the heavier side, but
Absolutely.
it's not something that we consciously kind of gone and said we want to cover things or not.
I just lost a bet to myself, I suppose.
Oh, why was that?
I was betting that you guys did this on purpose, because when you start a brand or a business, you always come up with like a mission statement or a model. And I could have swore in my head that you guys sat down and said, this is what's going to make us stand out from
Yes.
the others. And we are doing this on purpose. And we sent out all the memos and all the emails. And now you're just saying it was just like a total whim. So swing and a miss on that one for me.
I will say this part was somewhat calculated. Was we noticed that there was a massive gap in strategy guide content for board games, and that's just across, like, there are plenty of reviewers, there's plenty of unboxing videos, there's plenty of playthroughs, there's tons of stuff on that, and there's a lot of it is very good, but we noticed that no one's doing any strategy guides, or very few people. And certainly it was surprising actually for many games, like a game like Wingspan, for example. There was no other strategy guides in that we could find. And so while we do what we want a lot of the time, we're also looking for niches that we can fill. Avalon Hill, the games are really old, but there's some people who grew up with them, or who as a cool retro thing might want to try them. And so we're trying to fill that gap, but it's also fun for us to explore those games too, because ultimately it's really what's fun for us, and we hope that will also be fun for other people to watch as well.
Yeah, I think that I was thinking that I've been mildly criticized for doing stuff on my channel that's old. Like, I'll give you an example. I recently just really got into Through the Ages for the first time. Talked about it on my show, whatnot. People are I get a little bit of criticism, like the cult of the new, I guess is what they say. Like, why are you talking about this older game? Why are you holding up and saying, oh, I really enjoyed this game, or giving my thoughts on who would like this game? And then I came across your channel. I'm like, boy, you guys are doing games that are twice as old as that, and Avalon Hill games from the 80s. Excuse me.
The oldest game.
Do you find that to be limiting at all? And I not necessarily in the like subscribers, because you said you guys are doing fairly well, but do you find that limiting as far as you don't have the autonomy to just break out into some different kind of game? Maybe I don't want to do a war game. Maybe I want to do like a set collection or a trick taking game, or
well, we don't put any limits on ourselves in that sense.
Okay.
It's whatever each of us wants to do. I'm fortunate in that we have a good collaborative relationship, in that we will kind of give our thoughts or advice on what we think of covering a certain game or whatever, but we don't put an obstacle in anyone's way. If that's what they want to cover, that's what they want to cover. If that's what they want to spend their time on. The oldest game we've covered so far anyway is Football Strategy, which is, I think, originally published in 1959, one of the very first Avalon Hill games. Wow. Again, I don't know if for those kind of games, I don't know if there's a market for them, but I figure, hey, it's worth a try. And if some of these games, really, a lot of these games can now be revived digitally, so you may not be able to get copies of them, or they're very expensive on eBay. But there are digital versions now that we can use to play those games. So and that way we don't miss out on potentially amazing experiences. Because I'm not a massive fan of the kind of the cult of the new. I'm not immediately drawn to a game because it's new. I'm drawn to a game because it's good and people are talking about it as, a great game. To me, that's first and foremost. There's lots of games that are coming out now. A lot of them are very good. There's some that are coming out that aren't so good. But I think that, it shouldn't matter whether a game is old. If it's fun to play and it's still, something that, speaks to modern audiences in some way, I'm all for it. Let's get some content up there and let people know that there are great games that are out there.
Yeah, and you really dive into, like you said, just card by card. What your channel reminds me of, and it's really actually kind of brilliant, excuse me, in a way. It reminds me when I was a kid, I would go to Barnes and Noble, which is a bookseller, and they would have strategy guides, walkthroughs. Of course, we're kind of the older generation, so you couldn't just hop online or watch, somebody play video games on YouTube. There wasn't even a YouTube.
Yeah.
And so, excuse me. Sorry.
That's okay.
So one of the things that I think is great about your channel, it's brilliant actually, is that you're kind of replicating that feeling of when I was a kid to go, and most of the times you didn't even buy the strategy guides, like you just kind of would look at them as a kid. Yeah. So it seems that's what I thought. I thought like you guys basically took that idea and just kind of extrapolated it onto the YouTube platform. And so instead of pages and chapters of like walkthroughs, or here's some strategy as far as if you want to play, I mentioned 1960 earlier, so we'll just kind of run with that. If you want to play this kind of strategy, these are the cards and how they work towards that. You could find that all in a book for like a video game growing up. But for tabletop games, as you mentioned, there's not a whole lot that I've seen a little bit in written form. And that's just on like BGG. People write like 5,000 characters on like, how to win Seven Wonders Duel, which I actually may have read or
yes,
twice.
Of course. Yes.
But that's what's so unique about like your channel. So I'm just kind of saying to any of like my audience out there, that doesn't know anything about Legendary Tactics or never even heard of it before, it's a really, really good resource is what I would say. It's entertaining, but it's mostly a resource for if you're a really big gamer, if you take it seriously, if you quote unquote play to win. This channel, or your channel, I should say, basically takes that same idea. I think it's just brilliant, actually.
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, again, it was just noticing the niche. There was plenty of strategy articles on Board Game Geek, and in olden times when I was a kid, Avalon Hill published a magazine called The General, and I would usually back then you would mail away to Avalon Hill your order, and it would come in the mail. And I'd usually add a few copies of The General that concerned the game that I just bought. So I was used to that kind of the strategy discussion, and I enjoyed that part of it. I loved reading those articles back then, and I still enjoy reading people's thoughts on strategy on Board Game Geek. But I noticed that there was just no content video wise. There's like next to nothing there was some stuff on Root, I remember, and a few games, but there was very, very little content on the strategy side of it. And so again, we're just, this is something we were interested in anyway. And we still do playthroughs. We do our own take on unboxings, because we we decided fairly early on that unboxings were kind of ridiculous. So we do them as reboxings, where we unbox it, but then we flip the footage so it's backwards. So essentially we're putting the game back in the box. So we take
and like the
advantage.
shrink wrap and everything, like the shrink wrap just comes back on.
Yeah, we put the shrink wrap back on and everything. So we it's kind of our little take on because we know that people like unboxings, and we just think that they're kind of ridiculous. So we do them as in reverse. So all the cards fly into your hand, and you hover the Ziploc bag over the pieces, and they all go into, suck up into the bag, and that kind of thing. So it's just our take on it. But we have that kind of content too, but we want to do strategy guides as kind of the centerpiece, and everything else is around that as a support for that. And ideally, like for example, some of our root content and wingspan content, we've actually gone through and said, okay, here's the strategy guide for the Marquise de Cat. Now here's an example of us playing against the AI and winning with the strategies that we've just talked about. So then you can actually see it in action. So it's, all designed kind of the core is the strategy guides, and then everything else is kind of surrounding that and supporting that.
Cool. So I got about 3 things left that I want to do today before we kind of sign off. One, I want to talk about the future. After that, I want to talk about something current, some current event. And then third thing, if you have some time, we'll do something fun. So with, 2022, what is in future, like for my audience that might come over to you, or just your audience that's coming over just to watch you, since they never get a chance to see you? It's like, come see the wizard on As Per My Ability.
Yes, exactly.
What's in the future? So what's in store for Legendary Tactics in the next year? What can we look for?
Well, there will be some more of the same. So for fans that have been around, with us for a while, there are some games that we will continue to cover, like Diplomacy, which is again quite an older game. I think published the same year as Football Strategy. Actually, it's either 1959 or 1962, but it's had quite a resurgence actually recently, and so we've it's been a big part of our channel. We'll be continuing with things like that. We're also trying to do some innovations. One of the things that we're looking to try out is dramatizations of board games. Everyone loves games because they tell a story, and that's a lot of times, especially the gamers that love theme over the gameplay. They always talk about the story the game tells. Well, we're actually creating storylines based on the game. So the game dictates what happens, and we just kind of add characters in and dialogue and so forth to actually bring the game to life, literally, just as those kind of players enjoy. It's a bit of a time-consuming process, but I've got a series I've started called The Thunder of War, which is based on a GMT game, Skies Above the Reich. So I played 6 games of it, which is through essentially the 1942 year. So I played 6 games of it, and now I'm just in the process. I'm working on the 3rd one out of the 6 right now, which dramatizes that. And actually, so there's characters, there's discussions, and conflict and all that sort of thing.
How does that work? Is it audio? Are you writing a novel, or is it a video?
Well, it's reading like a story. Yeah, I'm reading. It's almost like I'm narrating a story.
Narrate. Okay. All right.
So I have shots of the board game and shots of the characters, which are based kind of on my own art, essentially. Some of the pictures turned out well, some didn't, but that's okay. And then I also use like a flight simulator program to simulate. So it's a mixture of the game, the characters, and the action, I guess you could say. And so I just came out with my 2nd episode last week, and they take a while to do, but they're a fun, creative project. We're doing more of choose your own adventures, which we've done a few of, where it's again experimenting, but using the timestamps in the description Just like if you've read any of those old choose your own adventure books.
I did see that. You've got one video that I've seen that.
Yeah,
I
I think we've done 4 or 5 in
Oh,
total.
I saw one. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to do more of those.
I aced it.
What's that?
I aced it. It was like the worker placement. The worker placement
Yes.
one.
Oh, the
I
worker
aced
placement one. Yes.
Yeah, that's the one I
Yes.
watched.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been experimenting. Sometimes it's like a format where you can, for example, Flash did one where it helps you choose the best solo game for your gaming night, right? So you go through how, or what do you feel like, or what do you think, or best board games for couples, and so it walks you through a little choose your own adventure to find, and then comes up with a recommendation for you. So there's things like that. What's the other? There's a lot of the time what we're trying to do is really innovate within the space. And again, I'm not to take away from the other creators, but there's a lot of creators that just they have a game set up and they're sitting in front of a wall of board games and they're just talking about the game, and that's fine. Now, there's, as I said, I watch a lot of that. I enjoy a lot of that content, but we just think that you can do so much more in this kind of a space. And we've already vowed we're never going to do a video, or may do as a joke maybe, but of us in front of a wall of board games talking about whatever, because we just want to do something different. We want to do something that no one else is doing. And again, sometimes I think that costs our channel a little bit because there's not the built-in audience. I mean, it's the beginning of the year, so how many top 10 lists have come out over the last week or so? Top games
10.
of 2022, top games of 2021. They're all great, but just why not have some innovation in there? Why not have something new, that's like something we're also experimenting with in the coming year will be the master class. We did a wingspan master class where we have essentially, it's like a compilation video, but the idea is that it with wingspan, it compresses how to play, a review, the strategy guides and examples of play that illustrate the strategies, the best strategies, all in one video. So it's a massive thing. It's like 5 hours long, but it's almost, again, like a reference guide. And
that's like super ambitious, man.
Super it is ambitious. Yeah,
that's
like
awesome.
We're having fun with that idea of just innovating. Like if we had, like with the reboxing idea, it's not, we don't just do unboxings, we do reboxings. And it's fun to have the physics, where all the the cards are jumping around, and it looks ridiculous in a way, but we play it straight and give an honest assessment of the components and so forth. So it reads like a regular reboxing, but we're having some fun with it and putting a twist on it. That so as much as possible, we're looking to innovate and put some content out there that just fills a space that we see that is not being filled. And that's, for us, that's a satisfying part of doing this kind of content is knowing that there really is no one else doing what we're doing. And it's not that they can't, it's not like we're we've got some sort of barriers to entry, but I think we're just trying to think outside of the box, and it does take more time and effort to put those things together, because not just where you turn the camera on and just start talking.
Right.
That the Thunder of War, the second episode, I mean, I was working on it off and on, but it took me I'm guessing probably 40 hours to put that together, and like, when you have everything up, it was probably about 40 hours of work to do it for an 20-minute video. So
wow.
Yeah. So but again, it's, for us, it's more about the experimentation and the artistry of it than it is about necessarily attracting the most viewers at any given moment.
That's really awesome. Some of those ideas sound like, damn it, why didn't I come up with that? Like I could I could come up with an idea of like, what's the best for couples, like 2-player games. I play a lot of 2-player games, so
you should check
really
out our
cool.
choose your own adventure on that.
Of course. So you and I, last thing, I suppose, we'll kind of get into something a little more current. You and I, or at least someone on the Twitter was talking about like political correctness in games, or I don't really know exactly what phrase I want to use here, but so I just wanted to get your opinion on what do you think, because you deal, or at least I should say your channel, I'm not trying to single out, there are other people that are involved in this channel. So I just want my audience to know, but I'm talking with Nato because he just jumped on the Zoom call. But I guess, how do you feel about the idea of putting something that's maybe a little sensitive in a historical game versus completely avoiding it at all? And just saying, you know, we're not going to do a board game about that. For example, and I'll let you kind of go in a minute. But for example, someone I knew, I don't want to get into the whole story because we're limited on time and stuff, but one of my distant cousins friend was designing a board game. They knew I was into board games, and they wanted to come up with a Pearl Harbor game where it was a 2-player game. One person was playing Pearl Harbor, the Americans, and one person was playing the Japanese, the Empire of Japan. Yeah, you know, it was a prototype that was mostly just kind of sketches on, you know, notebook and stuff. It wasn't an actual game that we played, but it was just some ideas he had, and that was years ago. But I remember one of the thoughts I had was, I don't know if like this is the right you know, especially, you know, for Americans, that was really not a game that we should make. Or who wants to play Japan? Like, oh, I will, you know, I'll bomb, you know, 3,000 American lives. And so, like, what's your take on that? I mean, if it stays true to history, does it get away? Can you get away with some of that stuff as long as you stay true? Think of like Freedom, the Underground Railroad is one that I've been kind of criticized for, but I'll let you I'll let you go. What do you think?
I mean, it's a really interesting issue, and I did a video about this actually when the US was withdrawing from Afghanistan. One of the games on my shelf is A Distant Plane, which, you know, covers that conflict from 2001 until, you know, essentially the present day, or, you know, thereabouts. I think the game actually finishes in, I think, 2010 or thereabouts. But regardless, it was, you know, and those were some of the questions that I was asking. I think the conversation is extremely valuable. I think that it's very important that we take into account the different viewpoints. You know, there's some games, for example, like you know, Freedom, which is an interesting game, and you're trying to save as many slaves as possible from you know, enslavement as part of that's the game. And I think in that game they handled it very elegantly, in that they made the chasers a non-player. You know, that made it a little more palatable, I think, for a lot of people.
I agree.
But I think that, you know, like a good book, I think that games have the opportunity to teach people, just like you would want books written about history, even the ugly stuff, because we need to know what happened to give us context on what's happening now. And I think I would say that, just, I guess, my thoughts in a nutshell, if you can enjoy a book about an historical topic that is perhaps discussing a sensitive theme or something, there's no, I don't see it as being dissimilar to enjoying a game about the topic. But again, it's about how it's handled, and if it's respectful to the groups involved and so forth, in essentially telling their story. You know, I think that there's value in that, and in putting you in other people's shoes and walking a mile. You know, that mentality, and games give you that opportunity. And beyond that, a game can maybe get you interested in a topic. Like, for example, speaking of coin games, there's the first coin game by GMT is Andean Abyss, which is about the civil war that has been going on for decades in Colombia. I think they're at peace now, but you never know. But I've learned so much about that part of history because of that game. I had no knowledge of it or interest in it before I tried that game, but I tried the game mainly because the reviews were good. and I was looking for something different. And I've learned so much about what happened there. I've had great conversations with people from Colombia about that. And I have some knowledge. I can ask their thoughts and their opinions. To me, that's more valuable than not knowing anything about it at all. And just and not knowing anything about it, and therefore I can't relate to them and their experience. So yes, I think it's something that needs to be handled with care. But I think if it's done right and done respectfully and so forth, I would say it's almost like a good book on the topic. It can open up a new world to you and make you aware of issues and history and so forth that it was otherwise not available. I will say I did put out that video, and that was actually the most active Twitter conversation on that
Sure.
on that game. It sparked a lot of discussion, and a lot of it was very good. And actually, there's a lot of comments on that particular video as well. So if your viewers have a moment to skip over to that video, maybe you can put the link in the description or something. But it's should we game at all, or should we? Anyway, it's but there's a very interesting discussion that opened up, and I think that's valuable. I think we need to have discussions like this. We need to think this through and discuss it and find what works for everyone.
I've asked 3 people. You're the 4th person that I've asked that question to, and they've all responded in essentially the same way. Just about it's better to have the game than to just completely scrap it, but you got to give it its respect, and you got to, And I think out of, sorry to the other guys if they were watching this, but I think you put it quite eloquently.
Well, I try.
As far,
I'm an English major, so.
Me too. So, okay, so one thing I like to do with guests when they're on, if we have time and stuff, is to just kind of play a quick little game. I have down here, I'm using my phone, so I'm going to kind of be glancing down. Actually, I added up 12 categories of themes of games. See if you can give me one, maybe if you want to go for a bonus, maybe 2 games that are within that theme. See if you can get all 12 of them. And I won't. Sometimes I've timed people in the past. I found that that's just kind of, we end up laughing and joking about stuff anyways. So I've abandoned that idea. But we'll do that, and then we'll get to some plugs and stuff, and we'll let you get on with your Saturday evening. So, couple of rules. When you use a game, you can't use it again for if it would match for another category later on. And that's about it. It's really
that sounds good.
No rules to it. Okay, so how many games do you want to do per category? How ambitious are you feeling?
How many categories are there?
12.
Not
I shouldn't say categories. I should just say themes, games about.
How many games per theme?
I had one person try 3 each. That was quite the party.
Ambitious.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we could try 3. We'll see how far we get.
Okay. All right. So
games, if it's not working, then I'll just pretend I said 2.
All right. Yeah. I think that's what the other guy, Patrick, had to do when he was on my show. He just kind of, I think he bailed. Patrick, please don't cut my head off. I think he bailed. I can't remember. It was a while back. So the first one is games about zombies.
Zombicide and what's it? Dawn of the Zeds and Dead of Winter.
Games about food. So just any kind of thematic game that's about food.
Yeah. So Sushi Go, Food Chain Magnate.
Yep.
And would viticulture count?
No.
Okay.
So about wine.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of a food. Let me think. Be a good food-based one. Huh. That one stumped me a little bit there. I can't think of another one off the top of my head.
There is a game out there that is a worker placement game that uses sand timers as a timer for the worker.
Yes.
If you've heard of Kitchen Rush, that was
No, I've never heard of it.
It's a worker placement game with sand timers. And so
okay?
When you place it down, have you heard of this?
No, I haven't. No.
Never heard.
So when the worker stays there as long as the timer's down.
Yeah, and then when the sand drops, then you can flip it over and put it on another spot and take that action. And it's a real time cooperative game.
No, the only game I could think is there's probably like a Master Chef board game out there or something like that.
Yeah, I'm sure something just generic. Somewhere. Okay. Yeah. So the food one. Okay, good try. We're on good track. Games that take place in space.
Gaia Project.
Yeah.
Firefly.
Ooh.
And
IP.
Yes. And oh boy. Well, there's like Star Wars Rebellion, something like that.
Yep. All right. Oh, I gave it away. That's why it was on my head. Games based on intellectual property.
Oh, I see.
That's why it must have snuck in. I looked at the next one.
Yes, it was snuck
so
in
IP games is what we call them, intellectual property.
Yeah,
can't use Firefly. Can't use Firefly.
Yeah, so it has to be something, because there's like, I know there's a Walking Dead board game out there.
That would work.
What about the X-Wing? Have I used up Star Wars with Rebellion? Yes, I have. Okay. There's a Star Trek. What's it called? It's the same idea as the X-Wing model.
Alliance.
Is it Alliance? Yeah, that would be one. And another one.
I know there's a Star Trek Panic. I've only played Star Trek Panic. I'm not a big Trekkie.
Okay. And another one based on an IP.
Books, movies, TV shows.
Yeah. Well, would Netrunner count? Android Netrunner?
What's it based on? A movie?
Well, it's Android is I think a comic book series, but it's based on Android Netrunner is an amazing game. It's a living card game that Fantasy Flight was doing for about 6 years, I guess. But then the licensing ran out.
Richard Garfield.
Richard Garfield. Yeah, I don't know if that one would count though for what you're after.
Yeah, I just don't know what it's based off of.
Yeah,
I'm looking for movies and TV shows.
Oh yeah, no, it wouldn't be wouldn't be directly based off something. So let me think.
Specific.
Well, there's
think of like Prospero Hall. Oh
yes.
Just think of any Prospero Hall game.
Yeah, there's a Hellboy game as well.
There you go.
I don't know if it's just called Hellboy or what, but
I'm not sure.
I'll say that.
There's a million of them out there. Yeah, like Prospero Hall takes care of like a million and one games, from the Goonies to Top Gun to The Shining. They even have a Fast and Furious game, which I'm not a fan of.
That would be fun. I could see that one being The Shining. I'm not sure about, but
yeah.
But the Fast and Furious would be fun.
So you're smashing it, I guess. So word games, like word games.
Word games. Okay, well, Scrabble's the obvious one.
Yeah.
Boggle, and I'm going to throw in an odd one, but Byword, Buyword. It's an old Sid Saxon game from the 60s, I think. It's on my shelf.
All right, so let's talk about horror games. Now, nothing that you've used before, but 3 horror-themed games.
Horrified. Which is it kind of depends. So not zombie then. So Fury of Dracula.
Yep.
And horror.
Oh, come on, man.
Mr. Jack, maybe? Would that count?
Okay.
Jack the Ripper?
I'm incredibly disappointed in you, but it counts.
Okay.
It's got horror in the title.
It's not coming to mind. What is it?
Arkham Horror.
Oh, Arkham Horror. Well, but I don't
'Cause-
actually consider that real. Well, I've
Oh,
always seen that
yes.
as more of a fantasy type game than a horror type game.
No,
I know it has people going, well, in that case, yeah, Mansions of Madness might also
yeah,
qualify.
that would work too.
Yeah.
Okay,
But-
good job. Let's go on to games about animals, or dealing with animals.
Okay. Again, I'm going to have an odd selection here, but Yellowstone, which is an old Avalon Hill game where you
Don't know
actually
that
have
one.
to get your family of deer or elk or whatever to your feeding grounds in the summer and then back to the wintering grounds in the winter. It's actually a game based on
Okay.
Yellowstone Park.
I'll give you that one. Ding.
It's one that you've never heard of. Most people haven't. But I actually think it's really fun. But anyway, other games with animals. And I'm assuming like Catopoly is off the board, the Monopoly, but cat themed. I'm assuming that's off the list. Okay.
Yeah.
You're really strict.
No, I just hate Monopoly. That's all.
I know. Yes. Well, most people play it wrong anyway. That's an inside joke for my colleagues watching. So game with animals.
We were talking about one earlier. You did a master class, I believe.
Oh yeah, Wingspan. Yes, thank you for the hint. It was obvious. And I guess the Mariposa, which is the follow-up to Wingspan.
Yeah, good. Smashing that one up. I was thinking like Zularedo is another kind of older one. Let's see.
Know that one.
Oh, I guess I jumped around. It's horror. We did horror, didn't we? Okay, so I don't know if I could do this one. So get 3 games with a person's name in the title. Not like the designer. I'm saying like the name of the game is the name of a person, like Napoleon or something. Or persons' names. It doesn't have to be one person. It could be 2 people.
Well, there is an old Avalon Hill game. Again, I'm showing my interest in this. But there's an old Avalon Hill game called Hitler's War. Would that count?
Yep.
The name in it. What would be another one? There's Hannibal, Rome versus Carthage.
Yeah, I know that one.
And there's probably people screaming at the screen because there's an obvious one that I've missed.
I'm screaming at the screen right now.
Yes. Well, you came up with the questions.
That's
so
true. Yeah, I've had this on my phone for a while. So
yes. Let me see. Then
again, my game.
You may have to edit out my thinking time here. What were you going to say?
I was going to just say, then again, my game acumen doesn't go back as far as yours does.
Well, maybe.
Because I can think of like Tesla versus Edison, Lewis and Clark.
Oh yeah, Lewis and Clark. Yeah, I've never played those, but I'm just trying to think. I'm resisting the temptation to turn around and look at my game collection, to see if there's anything that comes to mind. So I'm resisting that as it's taking some of my mental energy to do that. Geez, I can't think. There's
got to be some like
old my head,
like war games that are named after some great leader or something.
Actually, I'm just trying to remember if that's a movie or I was thinking of one of geez, that's actually tougher than I expected. I was thinking I think there's a game called Rommel in the Desert. But I'd have to double check that one and Google it because that may be a movie. But I think there's one called Rommel in the Desert.
Okay. Well, I have no clue. But for brevity, let's just move on.
Let's just move on.
So this is kind of more of an opinion, I suppose. There's not really a right or wrong answer. I don't know why it's on the list, but let's do it. Games that are fantastic, but the artwork or components are dreadful.
Hmm. Oh
So
boy.
no table presence. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't look good, but is a fantastic game. I figured a lot of GMT games and Avalon Hill games would
Yeah.
fit in this category.
Like Space Empires 4X, I think would be universally accepted in that sense. Yeah, there's probably, it depends on your aesthetic. I guess it is more opinion based.
Yeah.
Like I've never been a massive fan of the look of Terra Mystica. Amazing game, and it's not, it's not horrific to look at. It's just that it's very generic looking, I guess, in my opinion. It doesn't jump out at me in the same way. And what would be another one that has, I mean, again, there's plenty of, I mean, you could even say something like some of the older games like Afrika Core or something, where it's just that yellow
Yeah.
drab kind of look. Not the most aesthetically pleasing game, I guess you could say. Maybe something like that.
Yeah, like I really enjoy Acquire a lot, Sid Saxon.
Yeah, Acquire's pretty
But
ugly. The original
yeah,
version of it is pretty ugly. That we still we have, I think Flash has a copy of one of the original
yeah,
copies of it, and yeah, it's pretty terrible looking. And they did a fair bit to improve it, although to be honest, I still kind of like the original the way it worked, because
Huh.
they went from the plastic to the cardboard, and I don't know, it's just something nice about putting the plastic pieces in before. But that's actually a game that our viewers can look forward to seeing us cover, because we've played a lot of Acquire in our time, and
Right on.
we want to do, it's one of those games we just haven't gotten around to. Is too many games, too little time, is the constant refrain, right? So
Yeah. Yeah, good on you. That's a one that I'll throw out at you is, for me anyways, and I don't have three of them, but I really enjoy Agricola a lot, but I think it just looks pretty drab on the table.
Yeah.
They really
Yeah.
need something that looks cool. I'm a big component theme guy, so
Yes.
it's like I want a game with like the miniatures. I want things to look cool, and
Yes.
for as much as fun as Agricola is, I wish it was a little more something. Yeah,
Yeah.
the color palette and stuff.
Yeah.
So down to the last one. This one should be
Yep.
a pretty easy one, knowing kind of a little bit of your background. So 3 games that involve building a civilization, or like Civ games.
Yeah.
It'd be-
Well, before it was a video game, it was a board game. There's Europa Universalis, which I think the play time is probably, if you go on Board Game Geek, it's one of the highest play times. I think they say it takes 60 hours. I'm pretty sure, an average game of the original Europa Universalis. Let's see. You could say Tapestry by Stonemaier Games, and another civilization builder. I guess I can't reuse Space Empires 4X, so no. I guess Eclipse, would that count? I guess
I haven't played it. I don't know.
No, Eclipse is it's in space. So you start out with you have your own little star system, and you've got a couple ships, and you build up an empire, and you're taking over.
I guess anything that would be a 4X.
Yeah, like you're building a civilization of sorts. So, or I can give you even a fourth one, is the old Advanced Civilization, which again, Avalon Hill game, but that was the inspiration for the computer games that followed, was that original board game.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I was expecting Through the Ages to hit there, since I
there's another one. Yeah,
threw that out earlier in the game.
I'm just going off the top of my head here.
Yeah, so that's everything that I have for us. Again, thanks for joining me. So I always give, obviously, credit to my guests. So thank you for joining me. The next minute is yours. Anything you want to plug? Anything, basically. How can we find you? Where can we see your stuff?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, we're obviously on YouTube. It's that's our main, I guess, where everything is routed to. And our channel is Legendary Tactics. You can find us also on Twitter, Instagram. We have a Facebook page, but not a lot goes on there. And we pop up on Reddit and Discord as well. We also have a Discord channel as well. So, but yeah, if you're interested in board games and specifically in board gaming better, that's us. That's what we're about. So,
I know that you're on Twitter because that's kind of how we've talked. And so
yes.
Anyone out there, any of my audience that's watching, really hook up with Legendary Tactics on Twitter, because you guys are really active.
Tacte 1.
Okay.
We ran out of room, so it's Legendary Tacte with like TACTI 1, if I'm not mistaken. So
okay.
Yeah, we ran out of characters. I
But
run out of characters constantly on Twitter. It's kind of part of the deal.
It's a good spot for people to see, like just a constant stream of like what you guys put out, almost like every day you're putting out content and stuff like that.
Yes, between the three of us, for some bizarre reason, we've managed a daily upload essentially for the last, well, not totally consistently, but almost every day for the last year and a half, probably.
Wow.
So yeah.
Cool.
I know we're crazy.
Well, again, Nato, thanks for joining me and just kind of sitting down talking about Legendary Tactics.
Well, thank you very much.
And board games in general, and just kind of playing around with me. For my audience at home, thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. Go check out Legendary Tactics, especially if you like war games, especially if you like strategy and you want to learn how to get better at a game or come up with a strategy, or just see what other people are saying about really, strategic based games. Go check them out. This is everything that I have for us today. So this is where I'm going to leave us. Once again, my name is Andrew Davidson, and you have been watching As Per My Ability. I'll see everyone at the next video.